It was another wild Saturday of college football. There were some upsets. There were some down to the wire nail biters. There were some missed targeting calls that will be talked about for a while, I think. And so we're here to recap it all on this Stock Up, Stock Down Sunday here on the Daily Huddle. I'm Garrett Seawright. Glad you have made us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. We'll start with the stock ups because when you look at the stock ups, I think this was one of those college football weekends that I think last weekend we called it a like don't bleep it up Sunday. That was the hey, basically all you had to do this weekend was don't bleep it up, and some schools bleeped it up. I don't think there were a whole lot of quote unquote bleep ups on Saturday. I don't think there are many that fit in to that category. But when you take a look at I think the first stock up is Oklahoma State. The end of Bedlam as we know it, which I think stinks. And I'm not necessarily like I think tradition is peer pressure from dead people. I'm not a huge like oh this is a tradition, but there are some games that should be played despite the conference realignments and all of that stuff. I don't care necessarily which schools are in which conference, and I'm not going to bang the drum and be like it's stupid that USC and UCLA is in the Big Ten. Like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Like the idea that conferences need to be aligned geographically, I just don't necessarily buy at this level. In like Division 3 football, yeah, they shouldn't be teams in California and Pennsylvania in the same conference. Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But when you're going to make $70 million a year in TV money, I don't necessarily give a damn about what state this school is, what conference this school is in, what states make up your conference. I don't think it matters. I do think it matters, though, that rivalries like Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, and there are Sooner fans that would tell you like it's not even really a rivalry. If you take a look at the historical results, they might have a case. And yet, the game matters to both sides. It's, I think, the definition of a rivalry. I'm sad to see Bedlam go because it's fun. And you saw it on display last night. That was a fun football game, and Oklahoma State comes out with the win over their hated rival. Yeah, it matters, and I think it should continue to matter to both sides. The argument that, well, we've got so many Power Five. I don't care. Figure it out. Figure it out. But Oklahoma State gets a win in the final Bedlam as we know it, and that'll mean something to them for a really long time. So congratulations to the Pokes because I think you've earned those bragging rights. And we'll talk about the Sooners here in a little bit. I know that taking care of business shouldn't be the like baseline or shouldn't get you a commendation. Florida State took care of business yesterday. And I think I'm not going to sit here. They took it personal that they weren't ranked in the top four. But I think for every reason that Georgia is ranked in the top four is they get the benefit of the doubt because they're the back-to-back national champions and haven't lost a game in damn near 2 years. Florida State won their 15th straight yesterday. I think that should matter at some point. Winning should matter. I think, and the argument is always, like, for instance, I could say that Tulane's stock is down today because they won a 3-point game on the road at East Carolina, and but the key is they won. And if your argument is, like Ohio State struggled yesterday with Rutgers in the first half, they trailed 9-6 at half. If your argument is winning is difficult, that plays into the Florida State has won 15 straight. Winning is difficult, and they have continued to do it. Now, I don't expect any college football playoff rankings to change on Thursday. I don't. Maybe Ohio State drops from 1 to 2, and the argument is they were trailing at half to Rutgers. Okay, they won a conference game on the road. Winning is hard. They did it convincingly in the second half. I don't. We'll discuss that later in the week. But Florida State, I don't know that I want to sit here and say, they felt disrespected. They took care of business, and taking care of business is harder than people think it is. So when you can take care of business, that's impressive to me. I'll give you a stock up. I got Arizona in the stock up category. They're bowl eligible for the first time in a couple of years. They beat pretty soundly UCLA, who I think was kind of tottering on, are you good or is everybody you played not as good? Those questions had persisted for UCLA, and Arizona has played everybody pretty much really tough, and they got a convincing win on Saturday. The Wildcats have never made a Rose Bowl, and I don't think that's going to change this year, especially with it being a national college football playoff semifinal. But I can see them playing in that game down the road just because what they're building right now is somewhat impressive. Like it is, they are doing a nice job. They can get to a New Year's Six at some point, which would be like unprecedented for them. So, what they've done even this year, I think they've got the right staff in place. They've got the right recruiting strategy in place. That's a place where you can get some JUCO guys and some transfer portal guys. Arizona's a nice place. And I think they can build something somewhat decent and nice there. And I think they're on the right track, especially it shows when you beat UCLA the way that you did on Saturday. Then I've got Liberty in the stock up. Flames 9-0. Flames are now sitting easily in the second seat of the group of 5 representative that can play in the New Year Six. I told you in the preseason that there were, I think, 3 teams that I told you like 5, but the 3 teams that I really thought had an opportunity to play in the New Year Six from the group of 5 were Tulane, Air Force, and Liberty. Well, I think Air Force screwed the pooch on that yesterday. We'll talk about it in another segment. But Liberty has remained undefeated, and the pathway to finishing 12-0 is really not that difficult. And their schedule as a whole was never going to be viewed as a super difficult schedule, just because Conference USA, I don't think is widely regarded as this meat grinder of a group of 5 conference. But they've got Old Dominion, UMass, and UTEP remaining on the schedule. Old Dominion's 4-5, UMass is 3-7, and UTEP is 3-7. There is a very likely chance that Liberty finishes 12-0, and if Tulane stumbles at all, it's going to be the Flames in the New Year's Six. I'm here to tell you right now. So you can you can handle that mentally however you'd like, but the reality is, if Tulane stumbles and Liberty don't, and wouldn't expect Liberty to stumble, Flames are going big time bowling in 2023. Then my final 3 stock ups. Kansas State is a stock up to me despite a loss. They pushed Texas to the brink. There are many who believe Texas is one of the 4 best teams in the country. I don't know that I'm there yet. They might be the 5th or 6th best team in the country, and they got pushed to the brink by Kansas State. The Wildcats are pretty darn good, and it never works this way. They might drop out of the top 25 this week because they lost. I don't think they should. I think they should move up in the top 25 because you pushed one of the, in my estimation, one of the 5 best teams in America to the brink. And probably should have won. I think that says a lot about your team and your program. I think Kansas State is a stock up despite a loss. Finally, I have Clemson as a stock up only because coming into the week, it was a penny stock. And when you beat Notre Dame, your stock has to go up some point, right? So it's gone from a penny stock to a junk stock at this point. I don't see Dabo Swinney just up and changing who he is and changing his philosophy in the offseason and riding that ship. I don't foresee that happening. But when you're a penny stock and you move up to a junk stock, technically you are a stock up. So stock up for the Clemson Tigers. And finally, despite a loss, I got to stock up for Ryan Walters at Purdue because what we mentioned on Thursday's show that there hadn't been a Big Ten coach that had been willing and forthright to put their name to the, hey, these guys is cheating at Michigan. I know it, you know it, we all know it. We've got the evidence. And Ryan Walters did that in his coach's show on Thursday night. He said, hey, listen, we've got the evidence. We know that they watched X amount of games at our facility. And that's who Purdue, and to say that the week that you're going to play that opponent, I have a lot of respect for because he thought it, he said it, he meant it, and he backed it up. He was willing to put his name and his face out there as a, hey, this happened. I know what happened. You know what happened. They know what happened. And I'm tired of tiptoeing around it. And I think that deserves a pat on the back. I think it's refreshing to see somebody speak with that amount of candor and say, hey, this is malarkey, poppycock bullcrap. I know it. You know it. Everybody knows it. And I'm tired of pretending like it ain't. So kudos to Purdue head coach Ryan Walters. He's this week's final stock up. You look at the stock downs, they kind of coincide with the stock ups. UCLA had a prime opportunity to get a win over a nice team, and it did not go well. They got beaten every aspect of the game, looked kind of disinterested, and I think that's a bad spot to be in the first weekend in November. Like, you're a top 25 team, and you look like you couldn't give a damn less. I don't know what the issue is there. I realize not everybody's going to be on for 12 straight weeks, 13 straight weeks, but you can't have a letdown like that when you're trying to improve your program, improve your resume. You can't have a letdown like that, and UCLA did. Oklahoma is a stock down. I mentioned before that even when they were undefeated, I'm guessing they feel like they didn't get the credit that they felt deserved because they were ranked pretty low despite being undefeated. Then they went on a road to Kansas and lost. And I told you after the college football playoff committee rankings came out last week that that was a message from the committee that, like, hey, Oklahoma, you don't have a path to the college football playoff. Despite beating Texas, you do not have a path to making the Final Four. Not going to happen for you. That was where the cutoff was right before Oklahoma. And then you go out and you lose a rivalry game, the final rivalry game, in what is, and I, to some of Oklahoma's credit, Oklahoma State takes that game much more seriously than Oklahoma does. Like, Oklahoma is Oklahoma State's biggest rival, but Oklahoma State is not Oklahoma's biggest rival. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you still got to show up and give your best effort. And I don't know that they did that. And I think it might come back to haunt them later on down the line. Because at this point, I maybe 10-2 Oklahoma still gets into a New Year's Six bowl game, but Sooners are not trending in the right direction right now, and there are calls from their fan base to fire offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby. I don't know how you assuage those calls here in the next couple of weeks, but they're definitely a stock down. Air Force is a stock down. I so badly wanted to see the Falcons in the New Year's Six to play a Power Five school who, had the opportunity to prepare for the triple option for a couple of weeks and prepare for a completely different style of football than you're ever really going to get to see on that stage. It's disappointing because that ship has sailed. It's a big win for Army in what has been a down season, but Air Force had the Commander-in-Chief trophy basically in their laps. All they had to do is take care of business against a not great Army squad and couldn't do it. And for that to be where the letdown happens is, I think, difficult to swallow for the Falcons because there are some rivalry games, and that one matters, and you don't win it, and it basically torpedoes your ultimate aspirations of going undefeated, winning a conference championship, playing on the sport's biggest stages. And now it's not going to happen because you didn't take care of business on Saturday against Army. And that stinks because there are like, I don't, maybe you have a different opinion on this. There are just some programs that you can't hate. I think Army, Navy, and Air Force are a couple of them. Like, you're just not allowed to be like, oh, God, I hate Air Force. Bruh. I don't think you're allowed to say that. I think I've told this story on the podcast before. A few years ago, I went to a game where it was Ohio State was playing Army, and this guy got out of his truck in the parking lot and shouted, "Go Army!" and then like looked around, ducking to see if anybody was going to throw anything at him. Like, bro, you're the Army. Like, who in America is like gonna chuck a full Bud Light at you because you shouted "Go Army"? That's just not. Nobody is sitting here like, I hate Army. Even Navy fans are like, I respect Army. I don't want to lose to Army, but they have my respect. And maybe Air Force and Navy are the only ones who are allowed to say I hate Army, and vice versa. Every other fan base has to, like, you can't be like, oh God, I just hate the Black Knights. It's not allowed. It's, oh, midshipman, I hope you can't say it. So I was rooting for Air Force. Wanted to see him on the sport's biggest stage. It's not going to happen now, and I think that stinks. Our final two stock downs: Notre Dame. You can't continue to use we're everybody's Super Bowl, so we're going to get everybody's best shot. That's why we lost. Sorry. You think you're the only one? You're not. So does that suck? Yeah. But you got to take care of business. Clemson is not better than Notre Dame. I don't think Clemson has a better roster. I don't think Clemson is better coached. Despite being on the road, you got to take care of business. And Notre Dame didn't take care of business. They're now 7-3 in what was virtually kind of a lock to make a New Year's Six game. Notre Dame's staring at the Citrus Bowl at this point. Congratulations. And I think there are going to be questions from Notre Dame fans about whether, the status quo, quote unquote, the status quo is good enough under Marcus Freeman. And I don't know if that's warranted this early in the tenure, but those questions are going to be there. They're going to remain. They're going to persist until they win games like they should have won yesterday against Clemson, but they didn't. And the final stock down is Jimbo Fisher. Dude, when you get paid that much money, you can't have results like Jimbo Fisher has produced at Texas A&M. And the more that happens, the more that the questions are going to be like, wait, did Jameis Winston make Jimbo Fisher? Because what he's produced at Texas A&M has not been great. I would venture to guess that the only reason that Jimbo Fisher's seat is not significantly hotter than it is because of the contract. Because somebody would have to pony up a fat stack of cash to get Jimbo Fisher out of College Station. And I just think it's so unfeasible that nobody even like considers it. Because you can, like, it's one of those, like, we can sit here and bitch about it. Nothing's going to change. Like, nobody's going to pony up that money unless they just lose out and there is a conglomerate of rich old white dudes who are like, screw it. Let's come together. We'll each chip in however much money to get this guy out of here. I just don't foresee that happening. But in any other situation, either Jimbo Fisher's seat is scalding hot, third-degree burns on the rump, or he's already fired. But it's just not a possibility, which is good for him. You keep collecting those checks, but things have not gone remotely close to the way anybody in College Station thought they were going to under Jimbo Fisher. And I don't see that there being just like a super quick reaction and response to that either. I don't think that there's just a switch to be flipped and like magically they're contenders. And ultimately, that's what they're paying you for. And he's not producing those results. So Jimbo Fisher is the final stock down today here on the Daily Huddle. It's Sunday. You know what that means. It's time for the Stiff Arm Trophy update which I think we're getting into like, oh, you know what? Like it's time to like really seriously start talking about this, start thinking about this. So my ballot, if I had to submit one today, which I don't have, would love to have, let me know. Let's hook up. Let's collab. I don't know what the Heisman Trust gets out of allowing me to vote, but let's collab. The Stiff Arm Trophy update. Michael Penix Jr. remains at the top. Another fantastic performance, and they were tested in the win over USC. Um, Washington continues to be just an offensive juggernaut that has really not been tested all that much in the first 9 weeks of the season. Now, Caleb Williams threw for more yards and threw for more touchdowns, but Michael Penix Jr. 22 of 30, 256, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Another nice game, another victory, and Washington continues to look like one of the best teams in the country. And I don't know if we'll see a change there in the rankings or not, but I think you could argue Washington deserves to be in the top 5. The top 4, I beg your pardon. They were 5. I think they deserve to be in the top 5. Whether that happens, whether that changes, we'll see. But I'm just here to tell you that both Florida State and Washington might have gripes with where their rankings are come Tuesday. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. remaining at number 2. He only had 4 catches for 25 yards on Saturday, which is not all that productive until you then count that he had 2 touchdowns. And he had 4 catches, 25 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I will pound the table that Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best football player in college football, thus making him in the top 3 of my votes for guys for the trophy that is awarded to the best player in college football. Marvin Harrison is the best player in college football. Therefore, he's on the list. Now, your argument 4 catches, 25 yards is not great. 2 touchdowns matters. And when the defense is solely focused on eliminating you from the game plan and you still score 2 touchdowns, it's going to keep you on the list. It's not going to move you up the list. It might justifiably, I should probably move Marvin Harrison Jr. down from the list because Bo Nix had a baller game on Saturday. And you can say, okay, it happened against Cal. I hear you. But he threw for 386 and 4 tutties, where he led his offense to 63 points. I guess the backup came in at some point, but still, when you look at Bo Nix, 25 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, almost 3,000 yards passing, completing 78% of his passes. He's not getting as much talk as I think he deserves because what he is doing is incredibly impressive. But Bo Nix, the Oregon quarterback, takes the number 3 spot this week on the Heisman, on the Sunday Stiff Arm Trophy update. So that'll do it for this episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you are watching here on YouTube, click the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out here at Saturday Glory. If you're listening on the podcast, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping us get in front of more college football fans, and that is always a very, very, very good thing. We'll be back at it tomorrow. We'll keep our eyes glued on the Michigan sign stealing allegations. Something new comes out every day. We might be able to talk about the Michigan president groveling to the Big Ten, asking for due process, which I don't think is unfair of him. I mean, first of all, it's his job, and he's got maybe a legit argument there. But I'm sure more of stuff will come up this week that we'll talk about at college football playoff rankings, all sorts of stuff to get to this week. And we'll do it right here on the Daily Huddle with Saturday Glory.